The latest on the Supreme Court showdown, the New York Times drops a bomb on the president's taxes, and LeBron James single-handedly dragging his team to the finals yet again. Here's what you need to know. Good Monday morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for September 28th. I am Carlo Versano here with Baker Big Mac Machado, who is filling in for Jill Wagner, who is atoning today. Baker, I just came up with that. Do you like that nickname? Have you been called Big Mac before?
I have been called everything in the dictionary. I also know when a spam caller is calling my house because they call me Mr. McAdoo. So I get that all the time.
Baker Big Mac McAdoo
Yes.
in the house. Baker, how was your weekend? All right?
Oh, it was amazing. It was great. My husband, by the way, also atoning today. So that's why I'm at least 300 miles away from him today. So this is great.
It's just us, the Gentiles today. But
Exactly.
you know, I did want to. Well, it's funny. This weekend, so I met my brother's girlfriend, his new girlfriend, this weekend for the first time, and it was funny. I was thinking about it because I don't think I had met a new person in like 8 months.
It's so true, though. You're
Right?
so true.
I was like, who is this? Like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, I
there
didn't even know, like.
There was this story, I swear, I think it was either in the Times or the Atlantic, and it basically was saying that because of the pandemic, because we have so little interaction with everybody, and all of our interaction is through Zooms or FaceTimes, that we're all becoming more socially awkward now as a result of it. And last week, for the first time in 6 months, I went out to dinner with my friends. In the first time in 6 months, where we had cocktails and dinner, and it was so weird because none of us really knew what to talk about. Because even though we hadn't seen each other, it was the same thing. We all were just so weird and awkward.
I know. I was like, who is this person? What am I supposed to do with this person? I'm not going to shake your hand. Anyway, she was very sweet, and it was nice. But I just thought that was sort of funny.
All of it just so weird, Carlo. Let's, by the way, get everybody caught up on what's happening today. And there is a lot to get to, especially in the world of politics. President Trump has nominated Amy Coney Barrett to succeed Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. Now, Barrett would be the youngest Supreme Court justice on the dais. She would be 48 years old if confirmed, a former Notre Dame law professor and a federal appeals court judge. She's been nicknamed ACB, and she is conservative and favorite of the religious right, considered to have similar views of that of the late Justice Antonin Scalia, which she even said in her press conference, his views are my views. Now, Barrett and her husband have 7 children, Carlo, including 2 that they adopted from Haiti. She herself is one of 7 kids as well.
So so this was the pick that everyone was suspecting, and he made it public on Saturday. So this is, and if you want a sign that the Republicans are really planning to ram this thing through, Lindsey Graham, who is the Senate Judiciary Chairman, he was on Fox News this weekend putting out a timeline for Barrett's confirmation process, which would look something like this: hearings to start on October 12th. Basically, they would run October 12th, 13th, 14th, finish up on the 15th. He would give the nomination over to the Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, by October 22nd, and then presumably they would have a full floor vote soon afterwards, which means, all going according to their plan, Judge Barrett would be seated on the Supreme Court by Election Day, which would, of course, give that court its most lopsided conservative majority in about 50 years. If I were advising the Democrats, which I often say here, and I don't actually do, but they should probably hire me.
They should be listening to this podcast every morning.
Yeah, I would tell them to probably, boycott these confirmation hearings altogether. If the Senate Republicans aren't going to play by their own rules, right, then why legitimize it? Why do the whole confirmation song and dance and the whole Brett Kavanaugh thing? And she's going to be confirmed either way, right? They have the votes. So I would just say don't go, and just go out there in the media and do a press conference every day from the Senate, the building, and just the Russell building, and just say, yeah, we're not there because this is an illegitimate process. That's what I would advise them. Of course, the Democrats won't do that because they're terrified of wielding power in any way.
Right. There are Democrats. When we saw a lot of the statements coming out on Saturday when the pick was announced, Carlo, a lot of Democrats, from Richard Blumenthal to others, said that they don't plan on meeting with Amy Coney Barrett at all, a la Merrick Garland. Then there were some other ones that did say they were planning to meet with her, the Joe Manchins of the world as well. Even Dick Durbin, the number 2 Democrat in the Senate, saying he plans to meet with her. You have to also think, though, Carlo, if Democrats do show up to her confirmation hearings, that's an opportunity to really get some interesting quotes out of her. And also, don't forget, Kamala Harris is on the Judiciary panel as well. That is going to be a matchup a lot of people are going to look for. But you did say one operative key word in all of what you were saying earlier: if things go according to plan. What we learned from Kavanaugh, things don't go according to plan. And even John Cornyn, the number 2 Republican in the Senate, has said that this confirmation battle will be Kavanaugh on steroids. The clock is ticking, obviously, for them to get this down and done. They've got the votes to get it done. But whether or not that happens will be an interesting thing. I would say, though, Mitt Romney's statement over the weekend about how much he likes Amy Coney Barrett should give Democrats some worry if they were hoping that he would change his vote at the last minute.
No, yeah, I don't think he would. I mean, I think that she is. First of all, I think that she's probably she certainly appears to be qualified and a successful and impressive woman. But again, the issue comes down to the legitimacy of the process, I think. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, there are some procedural things the Democrats could do to sort of gum up the works, right? There's talk about trying to impeach Bill Barr in the House and throw that to the Senate. Again, I don't think that they're going to do that because this isn't how the Democrats work. I think they'll probably whine and complain, and she will be confirmed, and that will be that.
Yeah, by the way, Lindsey Graham asking for money multiple times in his Fox News interviews over the weekend as well. Just goes to show that this confirmation battle potentially might take Lindsey Graham down. He is in basically a toss-up race right now in the polls against Jamie Harrison. But I do want to switch gears and talk about the big bombshell report that is essentially 4 years in the making, Carlo, and the New York Times. They have obtained 2 decades of President Trump's tax returns, which show that he paid $0 in federal income taxes in 10 of the last 15 years. And the year he was elected to office in 2016, he paid just $750 in taxes. By the way, the average tax filer paid about $12,200 in 2017. That is about 16 times more than what the president had paid. Now, the documents also show that the president's tax bill, Carlo, was so low largely because he was losing so much money. In 2018, President Trump reported a loss of $47 million on earnings of $435 million, Carlo.
So this came down last night, right? I was sitting down for dinner, and I was just like, "Wow, they got him." I mean, remember this has been sort of the white whale of journalism since President Trump was started running for office and said that he wasn't going to release his tax returns, and the Times got him. This one quote from the story, I haven't even actually finished the story yet.
It's so long, but it's so good.
It's so long, but there's a lot of stuff in there. This one quote stuck out to me, quoting from the New York Times. Mr. Trump, by contrast, is running a federal government to which he has contributed almost no income tax revenue in many years. I think that sort of gets to the heart of what this is about. Also, the other thing that jumped out to me is these returns show that the president is on the hook for at least $300 million in personal loans that he guarantees personally that are coming due in the next 3 or 4 years. We don't even know who the lender of that $300 million is. And I mean, I don't know. That seems like a pretty big national security risk, however you slice it, that the president is on the hook for hundreds of $1 million in personal loans, and we don't know who the lender is. I don't know. That's crazy.
By the way, on top of all of that, we found out about the infamous audit as well. You know how President Trump continues to say, I won't release my tax returns because I'm being audited by the IRS. We found out what that is. According to the New York Times, it was a $70 million that President Trump got back in a tax return that's now being flagged by the IRS.
Right, they're saying that they want that money back, and that's the basis of the audit. Right, good point. I think if Jill were here, she would say that, she would be like, does this matter? Right? She would raise sort of like the devil's advocate question. And I would argue that it does. I mean, first of all, Baker, if you and I were in this much debt, we couldn't even get a job, right? Let alone be elected president. And not even this much debt. If we had any sort of, major debt like this, like we wouldn't,
a lender would run away from it. A lender would never even give me any more money.
Right. So that's the first thing. But I mean, secondly, there's something about the number $750 that you mentioned that I think really breaks through. I think it's actually more. I think it's more. It's almost like it's different than if it was just $0. Like there's something about the 750, right? Like that's the cost.
It
The
wasn't
cost of
like
like
a
a
dollar, like
low
he's on The Price is Right.
Right, exactly. But it's like it's just so absurdly low for a supposedly very rich person. And rich people not paying their fair share of taxes, I think, is something that pretty much everybody agrees on in this very polarized country. So I don't know if it's going to break through or not. It also shows that the entire the facade that President Trump is sort of like this brilliant billionaire businessman is not really true. I mean, we all knew, anyone in New York could have told you that, but I think it's now very obvious that to anyone who's paying attention, that the whole shtick is just not based on anything. Now, I'm not saying that it changes the dynamic of the race, and also, for the record, it doesn't. From what I can tell, it doesn't appear that the president is cheating on his taxes. He is using the levers of the tax
Of
code
loopholes,
to
correct.
benefit him. Right.
Right.
So I think that's important thing to mention. So I don't know if it changes the dynamic of the race, but it could. I think it'll certainly come up in the debate.
We remember 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton brought up most of these allegations in the debate against him, and President Trump actually said, this makes me smarter, because he had figured out a way to get around the tax code. The other thing is interesting, once the story came out, the Biden team really came out pushing new merchandise almost immediately. There's buttons now that say, I pay more in taxes than President Trump does. So you could probably see that being a thing that Joe Biden will say in the debate on Tuesday. Two quick things, Carlo, that stood out to me in the report also. One, Ivanka Trump's salary apparently had been written off for many, many, many years. That's essentially how she, as a term of the consulting fees. So that's how she was getting paid in all of this. Also, my favorite part is the $70,000 that President Trump wrote off in terms of getting haircuts. I have had a lot of expensive haircuts in my life. I have never paid $70,000 for a single haircut in my life. But to your question of, does this change the impact of the race? I would say maybe, only in the sense of, let's say if conservatives are able to get Amy Coney Barrett into the Supreme Court, President Trump would get 3 Supreme Court justices in. Maybe that's less Republican voters who are maybe not into President Trump, but like the fact that 3 justices have gotten in. Maybe they just don't head to the polls, and maybe that widens Biden's margin. But otherwise, we know President Trump supporters aren't going to change their mind on anything. So I really don't know how many more votes this actually gets Joe Biden.
Yeah, that's the big question. I mean, probably none, but who knows?
Let's talk polls now, Carlo. 2 new national polls show Joe Biden maintaining his 8 to 10 point national lead among likely voters ahead of the first debate happening tomorrow. Biden's at 44 in a new ABC Washington Post poll and 49-41 in a New York Times Siena poll. Now, both those polls were commissioned after RBG's death, and the latter, the New York Times Siena poll, found that a majority, 56% of respondents, want the winner of the election to determine who fills that Supreme Court vacancy. Now, both polls suggest Joe Biden continuing to make inroads among women and Trump maintaining an edge among white voters. But one part that really stood out to me the most, Carlo, Hillary Clinton won political moderates by 12 points in 2016. This same exact poll in the ABC News Washington Post poll finds Joe Biden leads them now by 47. Clinton won independent women by 4 points. Joe Biden leads them by 57. So a huge shift in the dynamic here.
Yeah, and again, like as Joe would say, who knows? The polls could be wrong. And of course, they were in 2016. I mean, the 538 national polling average right now gives Joe Biden a 78% chance of winning. That's very strong, obviously, but it's not a done deal by any stretch. Remember, Hillary Clinton went into election night with roughly the same odds in the 538 national polling. The polls are also very interesting, Baker, I think, because they've been very steady, right? There's been so many external inputs, right, from the virus to the economy to the Supreme Court, and Biden is sort of maintaining this 8 to 10 point lead in these national polls. It's fascinating to me. I think what that does is suggest that a lot of people, going into this year, even before COVID, sort of were like, I'm either for Trump or I'm against him, and that's that.
Right.
But I do think that the debate tomorrow is going to be critical. Even though Biden is up, I think the stakes are much higher for him, just given how little that he's been out there in the public eye in this campaign, right? We have not seen a lot of him. And when we do see him, he's in these very sort of very tightly controlled environments. I do think people are going to want to see that he's sort of up to the task of running the country. I think that if he shows that he is tomorrow night, then he's in the position to win decisively on election night.
Yeah, listen, you bring up some really interesting points. And by the way, we haven't had a national poll since March, Carlo, that showed President Trump ahead in the national poll. So Joe Biden, to your point, has consistently been in the lead throughout this entire campaign. With tomorrow, it's going to be interesting because there's been varying reports out there of how much preparation President Trump has been doing for the debates tomorrow. We know in the past he doesn't like to prepare for them. But I would temper expectations on this by saying there's new polling out that say close to 50% of Americans aren't going to be swayed either way based on these debates. So much of their idea is baked into this because, as you mentioned, you're either for President Trump or you're against President Trump. So there's very few swing voters left. What people are going to be watching for is Joe Biden, potential gaffes, if he does gaff up things, or what President Trump does to really go after him. Axios was reporting last night that President Trump is really going to go in terms of, I'm strong, you need somebody mentally able to be president, those sorts of things to go after Joe Biden. Joe Biden might come back with policy stuff, and we know President Trump is not very good when it comes to policy speeches.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk. Who knows what's going to happen? But it's going to be ugly. I think that there's no question about it. Is going to be President Trump is going to be howling at the moon tomorrow night, right? Like he hasn't been in the same room as Joe Biden. This is the chance for him to make his case to a public that has sort of moved past him in a lot of ways. So it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be ugly. Larger
question. Do you, and I actually had this conversation with my husband, do you think that this will be one of the highest rated debates, if not one of the highest rated things on television in history tomorrow?
I think it will be one of the highest rated debates. I think that, again, because of how little we've seen Biden, I think that people are really going to be tuning in. I think there's a lot of people out there who are like, I need to see that this guy is up to the task. And if he is, he's got my vote.
All right, let's talk about the pandemic now, Carlo. The national hospitalization rate has stopped declining and maybe starting to tick back up again as positive test rates are now hitting 25% in some Midwestern states. In North Dakota, the positive test rate went from 6 to 30% in just a week. Meanwhile, the global death toll is on the brink of hitting 1 million. And we had some scary news here in New York over the weekend, Carlo. We now had 1,000 new cases of the virus over the weekend. Our positivity rate is now getting close to about 1% back here in the city again.
Yeah, so the city's health department warning that there's these hot spots in Brooklyn and Queens, down where I am in South Brooklyn especially. They're seeing 3% positivity rates and climbing. There's about 8 zip codes that they're considering hot spots. And many of them are home to these large communities of Orthodox and Hasidic Jews. And I only say that because, having driven through some of these neighborhoods this weekend, and they're not wearing masks. They're just not. And I hate to make a paint with a broad brush like that, but they're not wearing masks, and that's a problem. I do want to, while we're talking about New York City, they're going to make the popular outdoor dining program permanent, Baker, all year round, which is some good news. I think
brunch
it was nice to see.
Brunch is going to be great in December, Carlo. I can't wait for it.
I know, but it's there was this rule. The city had this rule for years that you couldn't have propane like gas heaters on the sidewalk. The fire department had this rule, and they have gotten rid of that, which I think is great news. It's about time that someone in City Hall here is showing some creativity and some sense of vision. So that's great, and I think that that's really going to help a lot of restaurants, and it's been really popular. It's been fantastic. Restaurants are allowed to start indoor dining in the city this week at 25% capacity in the next couple days.
Yeah, which is amazing news. You're absolutely right, especially because the worry is if the virus continues to come back for a second wave, what does that do for the job market? We saw in particular restaurants and hospitality, the entire hospitality industry was affected by that. And if you had New York City, which has a ton of restaurants in it, not basically being able to tell their wait staff what the future status of their job is, you could see that being a huge issue down the road. Let's move to sports now, Carlo. I was depressed for many reasons over the weekend.
Thought of you.
One, of course, is my Nuggets, who have been so good, but down 3-1 this NBA postseason, losing to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers now going to beat the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals. But we got to talk about LeBron. I mean, what a storied career he has had. He will now make his first Finals appearance with the Lakers, giving them their first shot at a ring since 2010, when the late Kobe Bryant had been leading the team back then. But LeBron also going to face his former team, the Heat. They are, of course, a completely rebuilt team, but LeBron James, the numbers of how many times he's been to the NBA Finals is just incredible.
Yeah, look at the statistics. So LeBron made the finals in 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 17, 18. He was injured in 2019. His team missed the playoffs entirely, and now he's back to being in the finals in 2020. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, there's talk, is he better than Michael Jordan? I don't know, but the guy is. He's also our age.
I know, which also puts into context like how much we haven't accomplished in our life compared to LeBron James. It's interesting because in 2019, when he was injured, there was so much talk about like, why did he go to the Lakers? Was this the right move? Was he getting too old? And it was crazy because that was the first year he never made the playoffs. It was insane to think about. And the next year he's back in the finals. And if anything, the Lakers are the odds-on favorite here to win the entire thing.
Yeah, which is also a nice little tribute to Kobe, I think, right?
So
I mean,
true.
you forget that Kobe Bryant died this year. That was really that's when we should have known things were going south.
So true. Right? Such a good point. Okay.
January.
So true. Okay, finally, Carlo, in case you needed a good example of how upside down the box office is, I love this story. Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. You remember that movie when we were kids? Well, guess what, Carlo? It was one of the top movies at the box office over this weekend in 2020. The 40th re-release of the second episode of the original Star Wars trilogy made about $1 million over the weekend. That put it in 5th place. Tenet brought in a total of $41 million in North America, but that's been offset by the strong numbers that it's been getting overseas. It's now giving the Christopher Nolan flick a boost as it approaches the $300 million global number, which, if you think in context of all of this, Carlo, this film costs, I think it was a couple $100 million to make. It's essentially broken even. And if you are Warner Brothers and Christopher Nolan, with what has happened in this pandemic and the idea of how much you had to fight just to get this movie into theaters, the idea of breaking even seems like an incredible moment for them, given all the struggles that have happened with Disney and Mulan.
Yeah, and it all comes down to China, right? China. China's going to become more important in the box office as things go on.
They've overtaken every other year, Carlo. China overtakes the United States in terms of box office revenue, the highest ones in the world.
Yeah, no, and we're seeing it now. But, oh man, box office stories just make me miss going to the movies. Like, it's just one of my favorite things, and I cannot wait to do it again, even if it's just me.
Would you do it? Would you wait for the right movie to come to the theater, or would you wait for it to be safe? Because, like, I feel like there's two different ways two different modes of thought with people not wanting to go to the theaters. It's either there's nothing for me to see, or I just don't feel safe going to a theater.
No, if I got vaccinated today, I would go see the biggest piece of crap in the. I don't care what it is. I would go to the grocery. Yes, I would go to the grocery store. I would get my big pack of Sour Patch Kids. Yep. I would roll into the movie theater, sit by myself in the back row, and enjoy whatever was playing. It doesn't even matter what it is.
I do. I'm glad you say bring in your Sour Patch Kids, because there is like some weird rush you get by sneaking in a can of soda or something like that into the movie theater. Like, oh, they're not going to catch me, but I'm going to love this.
At our age, I think that's the closest we get to sort of being subversive, right?
So true.
Oh Lord. Okay. Well, Baker, it was we should end it there. It was great to have you today. Thank you for holding down the fort when Jill is out. We always appreciate it. It's great to see you. Happy birthday, Mama. I love you very much. And that is what you need to know for Monday, September 28th. See you guys tomorrow.